All right. So I have this project called Country Everywhere. It's a directory and community hub for underrepresented artists, LGBTQIA, BIPOC, and disabled in country music and Americana. And that's kind of what led me towards trying to find a solution, which is Webflow's lack of memberships, logins, or any of that kind of stuff. So this is how I came about learning about Softr. And last time, learning about Wiz, which I'm also excited to check out because I think they're kind of two options right now that are presented. So right now, this is just a directory. I'm using Firebase now. I've got a situation, but I wanted to just kind of show what this is because I went and tried to build a similar thing in Softr. So as far as the two tools we'll be talking about today is Airtable and Softr, and they work pretty much hand in hand. They are linked together pretty seamlessly. So as far as Airtable, if you're not familiar with Airtable, it's a relational database. It can do so many different things. We'll be going through a little bit of a base I have set up that feeds into the Softr site for the Country Everywhere that I've set up. But I've started to do time tracking. You can do automations. There's just, if you haven't explored Airtable, it is a very powerful no-code tool that you can use to connect things even with Webflow. You'll notice in the Country Everywhere base, a lot of the original stuff I have is for Webflow because I use Airtable as my source of truth and kind of feed things to the Webflow CMS. So the nice thing about, we're not talking about Webflow today, is that Softr and Airtable just work together. So Softr is a block builder is what I would kind of consider it. It is a real no-code tool. So it's designed for people that don't know how to code. They're not really familiar with CSS or any of that kind of stuff. So it's very simplified version. I don't know if you've kind of used Bubble or anything like that, but it has a similar look to, I guess, the sites that come out of Softr have a similar look to that of Bubble. And that's because they have a kind of a very basic structure. So if we jump in, so we see this is the basic site that I built on Softr, very much a similar with a filter. And if I hop into, here we go. There's a basic profile page for the artists. So Softr has this really cool kind of setup, which is they have their Softr studio. And the main thing that they have is they have pages. Let's just go with our homepage. And then they have blocks. So with a block, you can do all kinds of different things. So if we wanted to just add a block to here, there's all of these different types of static blocks. So if you've looked at any kind of other builders, they have like a whole series of here with call to action, here with email capture. And so they have these blocks that are set up for you just to really put something together very quickly. So this is, I don't even know what I grabbed here, but that's the concept with it. They have pricing blocks. And so it's almost like if you have an idea of what you want to build really quickly, you can, because they have a block for it. And so you just add it onto the page. And then the individual blocks, you can, for the different blocks, you can choose the features and whatnot, putting in titles and different things like that. Now, it is very basic as far as the setup for it, but you can start to see how you can put something together for an MVP or something very quickly for someone. And so I'll just get rid of this block and we'll just use the ones I have. And get rid of this guy here. But I think that the highlight of Softr and what makes it so simple is the users. It has a very easy to use user setup. You basically just set up a sign up page, a login page, and you can add users. So what it does is it hooks directly into a, let's go into the, it tells you which field. No, I'm not done. I won't do that as I mess up here. So let's just jump in and I'll just show you how simple the setup is. Let's go here. So if you want to just a login and sign up. So
this is, sorry, this is live right now. This is your
this
version
is a
of
this is the live version of it. So if I so anybody, so if you could go to countryeverywhere.softr.app and you could sign yourself, you could log in and sign up for it right now. And in order, and by doing that, it gives you the ability also, I'm just going to sign in. I was signed in earlier, but I guess I'm doing the sign up, Control C. But see, they have all of these. This is just kind of a setup block that they have. So you can just toss this on a site. So when they talk about building something very quickly, you can. The trick becomes making it look good. Like as we're Webflow people, we're used to things looking and feeling a certain way. And that, I think, is the biggest limit with Softr is the fact that you can't get the look and feel. It's not the same kind of custom solution. But when you need something, so what Softr does that everything else doesn't at the moment, unless I guess you go through the whole process of Wiz, is because Softr hooks up directly with Airtable, it is 100% secure. It's not a member stack. It is not even a Firebase. It's not, so it doesn't hide any of the details. If you say that somebody who is not logged in can't see this, it doesn't load it from Airtable. And that is the biggest difference. So for the current another project that I'm working on, I needed that security and there was nothing else available to me. So I think I'm sacrificing, the customizable that I get with Webflow and all of that, but I get a very fast login system that I can build, that's built in. You don't really have to do much to build it. You have a users table in Airtable, and that it gets linked to, and that becomes your Softr users. So that's how it hooks up to everything. Wrong page. So, but this is one of the blocks that I kind of wanted to show that how clunky it can be. So if I wanted to turn this particular block, I wanted to make it's very simple. So as far as I wanted to use this block as an example, because it's a very simple block. It's just a heading and some body text. So I can change the background color and let's just turn it to black, which is fine. Except for now, I want the text on the thing to be a different color. So I'm going to go and, so how do I make this white? Well, what I do is I have to click on this and then I have to change it to white.
Then you can't see.
And I can't see it in here. So that was a new thing that these are things you discover when you're playing around with it. So there's handy things to blocks and different things and how you do things, but it is also very simple. You can change a bit of line height, and you can do different things to the paddings and whatnot. But when you put a block on a page, so let's just throw in, let's go into so those are all your static blocks. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. There's testimonials, there's all kinds of teams. So they have things all set up for probably a ton of the use cases of what people want their blocks on their site to be and whatnot. And they have dynamic blocks that we use for creating a list, which is what this is. And then the list details page, they have dynamic blocks for those. I'm going to hop over to the dynamic page because it kind of shows another kind of thing. So as far as making this work quickly, you can set up your fields in Airtable. I don't know how many people are that familiar with Airtable, but when you use Airtable, even with Webflow, you have to do things to make things work and hook up, often using Webflow IDs and Airtable IDs and that kind of stuff. And so that's all gone with Softr. So you don't have to worry about any of that. It's a one-to-one connection with things. That being said, you have to use a lot of formulas in Softr in order to make things look a certain way. So for instance, the way that Softr works is it kind of stacks everything on top of each other. So I'm going to go into the listing page because it displays it the best. Listing details. So if I click in here, this is our listing details. And so every field goes to an Airtable field. So it hooks up and you pull it directly into whatever the Airtable thing that you want to do is. But here's so just this simple thing, like, so worked with, and this is actually a field I had to create in Airtable, a formula I had to write, because otherwise, I'm gonna just add a field to show you what that looks like. So I'm adding a field here. It has a label and it has text or whatever type of field it is. And then you kind of map the content of what you want that field to be. I don't know what, I just want something really simple. So there, the location city for that particular artist is mapped here. So it's got that quick one-to-one connection. You simply hook up your Airtable base, country everywhere, and then you choose the table. And so everything you have in that table, you have access to. Back to this worked with line. This worked with line in Airtable. Let's see if I find it real quick. It's similar to the band members line. So you see how everything in this is stacked on top of each other. You get a label and you get a name. So if you want something more beside it on the line, you have to create a formula, because this only works the way the structure of the block works. And so that's where I think Softr needs probably to kind of work on this particular thing. And that is also, you can't mix dynamic and static data except for this label. That's it. So you can change the name of this label statically, but that's it. You can't actually add any static data into this block. So it's
There's no
a
like
bit of a
text. Just put a
no. Yeah, it's frustrating in that, because you want your H1s and whatnot, and so you don't even get your semantic HTML kind of through this either, because it just uses this label field and it doesn't correspond with an H1 or whatnot. A heading has to be linked to some sort of dynamic data. So you have to get kind of creative. So I guess what I was doing with the labels, so like for instance, so you have this text, is so I'd be upping the size of this label so that it would look like a heading or something like that, and then you could put data underneath it and stuff like that. But so it's a little clunky still, like really now digging into it. It's easy to see, oh yeah, that's cool, it's got all these blocks and everything else, but these blocks are very specific. For instance, I ran into this block here with the dynamic, I'm in the dynamic list details, and I wanted this one. I was like, oh, okay, this one's got, 3 columns. Well, you start looking at the way that the block is set up. Oh, I gotta set up my base again. So here, country everywhere. Again, it's really, you don't have the headache with obviously joining here, people. You don't have the headache, connecting anything. Here, my Airtable base is set to Softr, done. So that's a huge plus if you're wanting to build simple things that they already have, set up for you. But for instance, if I add another text, I can't pick which column this goes into. It just literally follows this. And so if I want to change the order of something, I have to drag it. And yes, I can do that, but it would be much handier, at least when my thinking of things, I'm thinking of things in like, I want a column here, a column here, column here, like 3 columns side by side. And that's not what this is. And I can't even achieve that with this setup here. So they do have in their paid program, they do have some things where you can use embeds and custom code and things like that. So you may be able to create something like that. But whether you would go to that with this particular program, I'm not sure.
That answers your question, Eli, in the chat about whether or not there was an option for entering custom CSS. So yes, but in the higher paid professional plan, which is what we're looking at.
Yeah, and so if you look at their plans, it's not cheap either. So like for what I would consider, if you're going to be using this to like do memberships, logins, that kind of stuff, 5 members, I'm not really sure what you're going to do with 5 members for $24 a month. So you really are looking at this $65 a month tier.
Wait, they go from 5 to 10,000?
Huh?
They go from 5
it goes
to
from
10,000.
5 to, yeah. Sometimes the pricing on these things don't make a ton of sense. And like only it's got 1,000 records to the 10,000 Airtable records. So like you can play around, I guess, on the starter plan, but you can play around with a lot of stuff on the free plan if you want to just try it out. And they do have you can try, I think, one of the other plans for like a month or something like that and play around with some of the features, although I don't think all of the features are unlocked with it. Because there still seems to be some things that I can't do even in the other site that I'm building, because we haven't bought the professional plan yet for it. But that will live in Airtable and Softr, that site. And I think the trade-off that I'm making though is that what else do we have as far as options for building something that's secure for a login system? And I guess we talked about Wiz last time. I'm really interested in seeing what Wiz does and at what kind of effort you need to make Wiz work. Like, because this isn't a lot of development. This is what I found with Softr and Airtable and working on this project, is it was building my Airtable bases out to be usable by Softr was kind of, so I was getting much better at Airtable formulas and that kind of stuff, because you have to get creative with it. If you want it to look a certain way, then you have to kind of get creative with how you're going to put these things together, because the blocks exist and there's ways to do things, and it is set up, like, I think that's the thing I said at the start, is it's set up as a no-code tool. It is a no-code tool. This is, you look at some of the things that the way that you can adjust things is like, you can change the padding by X to XL. I don't even know what they are. You just kind of look at them and they change things and you're like, okay, that kind of looks okay. Like, so and borders and that kind of thing, like, but it's very simple, right? It's not complex. So you kind of look at what the blocks they have and if you can adapt that for what you need. And I think, would I use Softr in certain circumstances? A client isn't necessarily going to need, they need, in a case of a directory or something like that, they don't need something that looks fancy. So the functionality might, be the better decision for that. And in the case of the client I'm working with now, that's what they decided, as opposed to trying to figure out another solution for a secure login and whatnot. And that's the thing, is it is because it hooks up directly to Airtable, it is a secure login. The other thing that I found out when I was going through things today was the mobile stuff doesn't quite work so well. So
that's where your custom CSS comes in, I suppose.
Well, yeah, I would ask too, if you go into that tablet view, you've got that huge circle with the stripes. Can you then change the size of that in the tablet view, or is that it? It's just that size for you?
So I have it. So that's what this is here. So this is just literally a small icon. And so this was adjusted. I adjusted this down from whatever size. So I guess the other thing, if you're smart with your images, you can, I think it might be an SVG though. So if you were smart with the images, you might use a PNG that's the right size. And so those are the kind of things that I don't think are people that are no coders understand as much as people who use Webflow or other things, like know how to optimize images and stuff like that. So I'm not sure what kind of information they have on that, but yeah, I just ran into that one when I was going through it. And no, you can't, because it changes it on the desktop, and I can't actually adjust it on here without making the desktop look weird. And so that's, and the same thing with to compare it, because this is what you can do with Webflow. You can add things wherever you want and whatnot. There's a definite different look and feel to what you can achieve. It just depends on what ultimately you want to do. You can, though, with the users, with paid plans, you can actually have people update things very, very simply. It basically sets the permissions for it. So I think the winning part of it is their login system. Like, it is a really, really robust login system. I think they improved on it since last year. But the question is whether that's enough for your particular project to really deal with some kind of basic blocks that you can't change, very easily. You have very simple kind of stuff. And so that really is what the toss-up goes. But I guess in some cases you don't necessarily need it. And maybe they have blocks that it works for, and you need a secure login, and the customer is just willing to pay for whatever that is per month, that I guess is the trade-off. And that's kind of what I ran into with working with Softr, is at least that's where they're at right now. That being said, they're always updating. So like many other no-code tools, you don't know exactly where it's going.
So are you managing users from Softr or from Airtable?
So you can actually do both, but so in a users table, you can actually set, I don't know if I have this users table set up well. I just have a magic link and emails. So in this particular one, this has a lot of extra stuff that I should have probably cleaned out of here, but or hidden. But so it just basically uses the email for your login. So, or they have a magic link which you can send to customers. But you can also set up statuses right in Airtable that Softr adheres to. So it does have the logic where if, for instance, the site I'm building now, they want to have an approval process before a user who's logged or signed themselves up actually is approved to view the rest of the site. So that just is a status change in Webflow or in Airtable. So, and you can control permissions that way too. So you can have different levels of users based on statuses, and it follows that. The way that they now have their system for updating is it's basically an edit, almost like as if you could use the Webflow editor, but just on your own Airtable record, basically is all it is it gives permission for a user to edit their own record and not anybody else's, because it recognizes on Softr, it recognizes who the logged in user is. And then if it matches the record that's trying to be changed.
That's cool. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt your.
No, not all.
That's one of the things I've always been thinking about is, okay, so I allow someone to log in, but then how does that person update their email, update their profile picture, update their bio, update what, the location they live in, the type of music they play, whatever. That was always, that's like there's a lot more hoops you got to jump through then in order to get that. But if Softr is kind of solving that problem, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it was a huge hoop that I just managed to do with Country Everywhere with Firebase, and it took a lot of coding and figuring things out in order to hook things together to be able just to update. And yeah, I mean, that is the advantage. Softr works hand in hand with Airtable, and so it can pull your what you have in Airtable. The other thing that right now is a limitation, but Artur from Softr said they are going to have it so linked records can be in the filter, which is currently not available for here. So if somebody adds, say somebody adds a genre, or like in the case of the other directory I'm building, if a client adds a city or a state, it doesn't automatically get added. I had to do some Airtable automations to make something added to a multi-select field. And even then it doesn't seem to be instant. It seems to be that you need to actually go in and re-update that in Softr. So it's like still a little clunky.
Really?
Once they get the linked records though, it should be able to, bam, you have a list. So
it's not real time. It's not, if I update something in Airtable, it doesn't real time update in Softr. I have to go.
It does. It not for the filters though. So so if in the case of just the way that they're filtering. So where are we at? So in the case of let's go into this block. So in the case of this genre select, if I added something to here, I would expect, like if I added something, a genre to the genre select in, I don't know where this is. Maybe I won't find it very fast.
Genres right there.
Genres. Yeah, it's just a million things that you have to do for when you're hooking things up to Webflow too.
Yeah.
So you're like, what one? And so that I've got like Webflow and Softr hooked up to this one thing, which was probably a dumb thing to do. But yeah, I'm probably not going to be able to demo this real easy. But you would what you would expect is you would expect that this list would get updated. Well, I think it will, but not until you literally have to kind of go and reselect it. So that's where the clunky bit is right now, is if then it would appear, but it doesn't seem to be doing it on its own. But with the lookup fields, I'm hoping that changes, because you do want, especially for, it's really only for a filter list or something like that, but you want that to be populated. That information will still exist in somebody's profile or any of that kind of stuff, but just for this particular aspect of it, for the filtering, that was a bit of a hang up as well. So
is there a map? Is there a map block?
There is a Google, well, so there's a Google, it's actually not even a block. It's a, where are we at? It's in the higher tiered setup that you can set that up, but they have hookups to Google Maps. So they do actually have, where are we at? Integrations. There's all of these. So Airtable, obviously, but they have Google Map integration, all of these HubSpot chat, Stripe checkout, all kinds of things. So you can build different things. And I think that's the thing, is I'm coming from Webflow, so I'm used to a lot more creative control over things. But if I was coming from a completely no code perspective, I'd probably think differently about it, because of what it actually allows a person to be able to build and do, with the creative control limitations, but you still can build some very powerful apps and websites with it.
It's almost, as you're showing the blocks and that, it's reminding me a bit of Squarespace. Not as, Squarespace, you are editing right on the page still. You're not a lot of like old school web editors, it's like, here's what it is, and then here's where you edit it. And Squarespace was like, no, here's what it is, and here's where you edit it. But the whole idea of like, here's a block, choose a block, select your block, bring in it, that feels very Squarespace. But Squarespace obviously is more powerful because you can like add spacers and gutters, and you got a lot more like design control. But it's feeling like Softr is a tool that would be useful if you have a directory, a job board, I don't know what like a repository of just stuff for people to find and search and look through.
Yeah, and they have all of these templates. And actually, I always start with the same template pretty much, because it does. No, it's not the client template. Where are there? View more. Here we go. So I always go to the marketplaces. They have. Is it this one? Yeah, it's this template here. The co-living spaces, because it has the different. They has different hosts. It has different things. So a lot of this is kind of like a little bit like pre-built bubble kind of stuff that's already built up. They have a fashion e-commerce one now set up. So, but as far as for me, coming from Webflow, I like more creative control, and I think that's my biggest hold off right now from like fully endorsing and pulling for Softr right now. But that being said, there's not exactly a ton of options as far as membership and login right now. So
Can
like,
can I ask too, like, sorry, would there be any kind of use case if you had like a marketing site in Webflow and then your sign up login button took you to the Softr space so that you could have that kind of stuff live there? I don't know how it would work with the domain. That was actually another question that I had for you. Just I've been biting my tongue for 10 minutes because I was interested to know what the publication was like with regard to like domains and hosting, because I noticed you've got Softr.io. So does that work the same way as like Webflow.io does in those kind of staging sites? And then how does that work?
yeah, so you can just create so I'm opening up the studio. In the publish, you can actually change the subdomain however you want. Like you can change the name of it and just go softr.app.
Mhm.
And then you can also add you can add it on a subdomain, or you can add it on custom domains. You can add them in it as well. So yeah, very much kind of the same kind of idea. They also have for users, which is handy, is they have a test data. So you can actually add user test data in that's not going into your Airtable or whatnot. If you're just wanting to test things out, you can, which is quite a handy thing there. You just have to remember to take it off test data when you're actually wanting.
Can you show how, if I'm going to have 3 different pricing tiers, I've got a free tier, I've got a middle, and then a top tier. How am I controlling that the top tier gets everything, free tier gets only a small portion, middle tier gets some? I assume that I can control that.
So you can control it by page, and you can control it by block even. So for the site that I'm building right now, is I actually have on the same page, I have information that is for everyone, and then information that is only for approved users. So that is quite handy. You don't have to build separate pages for that. And so that's in the settings here. Where are we at? User groups and permissions. So if I wanted to add a user group, I can just, so this is approved. I don't have a status yet, but you can just add a condition. So whatever this group is, you can add a condition, logged in users.
Oh, so then this is where you could set the status in your Airtable. So
you set the status in your Airtable, select the condition, and then you make the value that condition. And then what ends up happening with that is on the page settings. So let's go to a real page. So let's just go with the listing details page. If I wanted to, I can set this down to its invisibility, and I can choose which, if I have a user group or whatnot, I can choose who can see the actual page. But I can also, so I'm going to go into the pages.
So you just created a user group called approved, right?
Yeah.
So could we make I don't want to.
So but I could go. So let's just create a status real quick in the users. So for people that aren't familiar, where's my single select? I'm just creating a status in Airtable. Okay. Status of users. Sure. Let's just do that. Oh, and I need to add some options though. So let's go unapproved. And of course. Let's try this again. Unapproved and approved. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to just give my test user. Which one is it? Country everywhere. Oh, just approve them all. That way I know it's the right one. So now I have that approved. So in the settings, let's just go to the block. It's really easy to show on the block. Home. So here on the block, again, that's what this is. So here's the visibility. And so logged in user, add a user group. I have to create a user group here. I guess I didn't create one. Add a condition. So logged in users. Oh, it's alphabetical, which is handy. Status is approved. Okay, so but that's not going to show us. Publish that real quick. Oh, well, I'll just log out. And that's also, I guess I didn't explain that at the top here as well. On your homepage, you get these bars, and so these are based on logged in or not logged in. So you actually can have multiple headers, and then you create the visibility of those headers based on. So this one that has an ad listing is logged in, and this one here is would just be any user, non-logged in users see that heading. Publish that. Let's go log out. And no more, we're not logged in, so we don't get the list anymore. So we can, that whole block is gone. Just log in again.
Is this stuff, you can do this with MemberStack, can't you?
You
Conditional
can
visibility.
you can hide things, but this isn't hiding it.
This is not loading it.
This is not loading it.
Yeah, okay.
I've checked the code. Did I not sign in properly? Maybe I'll watch what I'm doing this time.
That's interesting. I've got so we have an intranet with a directory for my work. And in there, we're going to show, you can like go to a user's page. Oh, so it's showing now. You've got here.
Yeah, so we're logged in, we're an approved user. So, but if I wasn't an approved user, it wouldn't show up. So that's how you can use those user groups. And that is what I think ultimately, this is why you would use Softr, is because like, I don't know why you would use it at the $24 level with like no memberships or anything. Like I can't foresee a reason to use it for that kind of thing. But for the login functionality and that security alone, you can build, in office apps or different things like that you want certain users to have certain control of, and you can control it easier through Airtable just by a status. Like that's how simple it is. It's not a complex kind of layer of things. It's like, if a person's status is this, then they can see these kind of things, or they can control this kind of thing. And so now that I'm logged in, this is how somebody can add their, they can add their listing, and this goes directly, this form, I'm just gonna hit it up, test 3.
Oh, it's like an Airtable form.
It's hooked directly. Yeah, I mean, you can style it however you want, but it's hooked directly to
So it populates Airtable, works both ways.
Exactly. And that's how also the edit works directly on the page, but I'm just quickly doing some things here just to show. Pop that in. I think that is. And then you're sending that in. Send the application. So not users, but people. There's test 3, and there's just a little bit of information there for that. And if we go back into here, test, like, I mean, this is the power of
Wow.
of Softr, right? We did all that other stuff and whatnot, but this is why, if you want to do something quick and you're not super concerned about the, all of the extra creative control, I mean, it doesn't get simpler.
You could have done that, but you would have with Webflow, but it would have been a Webflow form with Zapier to Airtable, and then Airtable is then updating the Webflow CMS, probably with either some sort of a script that you've written or a zap again to update from Airtable to Webflow, and that, and then that takes time, and that things break along the way. And
yeah,
it's not that this stuff isn't possible, it's just that it takes the headache out of it.
Yeah, so for Country Everywhere, I have new people, new profile. Set that up. I have this very extensive form when people, now it's hooked up so that when it goes here directly when people sign up using Firebase, that when they sign up originally, then they go and fill this form. And that's exactly it. This form goes, I use make, and this form goes, basically it goes into make, and then you have to, in order to get things back into Webflow, you have to change the way that Webflow views it. So I'm always using Airtable to do that simply. It's still complicated to send a form directly to Airtable or to Webflow. So it is possible. The updating is way more complex though. Like and how I've seen it, I kind of watched a quick YouTube on how easy it is, and it's just about user permissions. And then they get there's a little pen that pops up. You hit the pen or the pen only pops up if you're the logged in user that can edit your own Airtable record, basically. If not, it doesn't even show up. So, and then you click it, and it's like filling out, it's actually like editing your Airtable record, because I think that's what it actually pulls up is your Airtable record. So as far as for updating things and whatnot. So yeah, so it's been an interesting journey with it. I have my headaches, but I really like what they've done with what Softr's done with it and how easy it is to hook up to Airtable. My concern though is when Airtable isn't doing things for Softr. So what happens when Airtable changes things, or because Airtable sent out something about not hosting or not having the same URL, I guess, for images or attachments or something like that coming out in November.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I don't know, I'm curious to see how they're going to deal with that.
What's that update?
So they won't, if you use a URL in Airtable, it's either going to make you view whatever it is in Airtable, but you're not going to be able to, like, say you email somebody a URL to go check out. If they don't check it out like immediately, then that URL is going to stop working. It's a safety or security feature that Airtable is bringing up in November. I don't understand it completely, but I have to imagine, and Airtable says it specifically, like it's not designed to host attachments. Like that's not what they want to be used for. So maybe that's how they're getting people to stop doing that. Anyway,
If I were to, so it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremy, but unless you have a few other things that you are looking to run through from a presentational standpoint, this is officially open back up to everybody, correct?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Not that we've kind of pseudo been doing that for the last 20 minutes anyway, and we've had a lot of activity in the chat, but just in case anyone's been desperate to turn their video back on and like actually talk, you know, like please feel free. This has been a little bit like of a different presentational format in the sense that we've kind of just been demonstrating and chatting around it a little bit more than having kind of like 20 minutes of someone talking. So that's been really cool. Thank you, Jeremy. I know I have a couple more questions, but does anybody else?
Right, stop sharing. Did you stop sharing me? Yeah.
I was wondering whether somebody who's logged in, like somebody who has an account, can they delete their own account?
I think they can. I think there's ways of doing it. The deletion part, I'm not 100% sure of, but I think they've set something up, and I think it's somewhat new though, as far as people deleting their own, like deleting an account. I think it's possible now though, because people do kind of want that option, or you know, if they don't want to be part, but I don't know if they can do it directly. They probably eliminate their information, because the difference is the information, like from a profile perspective, is different than a user. They're not the same thing. They're actually on two different tables. You can link them, and that's how it's actually the email address. If it's linked on the other table, that's how it would get controlled.
Right. Cool. Thanks.
Rachel, what were your questions?
Yes, Kenny.
Actually.
I was going to say you were saying you weren't sure what anybody would use the $24 without membership option. I actually have a use case that I had hoped to use it with, which has never turned out because the guy's a bit of a twit. But it was for a used car dealership. And he had a nasty GoDaddy site that had just like chunks of information, but impossible to actually find anything or even know whether anything was current on the site. And I actually talked to him because we were looking for a car, so we went to see him. And we knew he was looking for a website because friends of ours had said, hey, this guy's looking for a website. But I couldn't convince him because at that point car sales were like nuts because of the pandemic, and he didn't have cars in the lot, and so he didn't go any further with it. But it was, it would be a very simple system for him to use. Is he's not, he can use computers and stuff, but he doesn't need a fancy Webflow site. He needs a place where he can show the cars that he's got and mark them sold, and if you were going to do anything, maybe doing some kind of an upvoting thing or a liked thing, but otherwise, that simple basic system would have been just perfect for him because he wasn't going to sell through it. It was just so that he could keep, what he's got, in inventory up to date on a website. So that would
feels
be
like you pay the $24 to get the little made in Softr to like remove the branding.
Yeah, that and a custom. I think you need it for oh no, actually, did custom domains, are they on the free plan? Because I think when I first was using it, you needed to have
custom domains are on the free plan.
Yeah, so I think when I first got it, they weren't or something, but
custom domains are on the free plan.
Yeah, that's a nice thing, right? That's when you'd expect to be paying for.
Yeah. No, custom code and live custom code, and I guess it's the records. The thing is, the Airtable integration is only 200 records for the free plan, so that's what you'd need to up to the paid plan for. But yeah, I guess I think for that's great, Penny, because I think for, I guess, at businesses or whatnot where you don't need a bunch of members,
Yeah.
would be a good solution.
Mhm.
If you like Airtable, it's just have you used the Airtable, what is it? Not the pages, the new one.
Oh, interfaces.
Interfaces.
Interface, right?
It's like a fancier
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, it's that.
easier
Yeah,
to
that's what I was
use
thinking.
interface.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a
Yeah.
website. Yeah, because interfaces are generally like a screen that you can kind of, whereas Softr is like a full website. But yeah,
Yeah. Well, an interface, you actually have to have edit permissions on the
Yeah.
Airtable account as well. So that's
Oh.
not very cost effective for most for a small business.
so I have this idea, and I've thought about making a website for the best grilled cheese sandwiches in the Twin Cities. And
Are you the grilled cheese dude in
I
the
love
fin
grilled
suite?
cheese sandwiches. But like some grilled cheese sandwiches are like, like sometimes you go to a place and it's like, yeah, they've got grilled cheese sandwiches and they're no good. It's like Wonder Bread and it's like Wonder Bread and the plastic cheese. Other
Yep.
places really take pride in their grilled cheese. And so I was like, I should make a website that is just, and I'll just review grilled cheese sandwiches. This would be a perfect example.
You just want an excuse to eat more grilled cheese sandwiches.
It's
The
so true.
perfect use case. Kyle's personal review system for grilled cheeses.
I was like,
We can
oh, this is
update the
great.
summary of the video for that. Anyone else who is trying to get in on this bandwagon, this is for you.
You just wait, Rachel. Rachel, I'll be like, okay, Rachel, there's this great grilled cheese. I've heard there's this great grilled cheese. We got to go try it out.
Well, I'll already know because I'll be a member.
It's free. There is no membership needs. And I was like, you could, if I build out like Unicorn Factory, he built it out for, New Zealand. He's like, I can take this to Canada. I can take this wherever. I'm like, we could do this with grilled cheeses. We could do this with cream cheese wontons. We could do this with so many different great types of food.
My husband
other
would do it
cities.
for pancakes.
For
Every time we go on vacation, we have to find like the fanciest pancake restaurant that makes like the most disgusting pancakes.
And now he's got a little Airtable that you manage for him.
Yeah.
All the best pancake restaurants.
Yeah, Jeremy, if you've ever been to Red Wagon in Vancouver, great pancakes.
Oh, I'll have to check it out. No,
Yeah.
I've never been.
Oh yeah, that's good.
I'm writing it down right now.
Mac and cheese. Spencer's saying mac and cheese.
Yes.
Great deal on mac. Anyway.
Let's circle back to that icebreaker. Favorite Canadian and preferred personal culinary review sites. Favorite personal Canadian culinary experience site. Getting wordy, but I think it'll work.
So Jeremy, your first Softr website, what's the learning curve? How many hours would it take if you've got your Airtable set up? What's the learning curve to get this thing built?
It's super fast. Like you could, like they're no joke. You can build, like if you for me, the trick was not having the Airtable base set up the way that it needed to be set up. I mean, so I have to go back and like do formulas and stuff like that to make it, again, just so that you can concatenate stuff to put it in a line. Like that's kind of the most frustrating aspect. But as far as you find a block and toss your data in it, I mean, you saw how, like, so the setup for this, because I wanted to play around with something for the country everywhere, I did that in an afternoon on the weekend. Like the setup, this filter system, the most time consuming part was the profile page, and I didn't like tackle most of it. That that's been it. So it's not a huge, you can go and build this thing in an afternoon very easily.
I was going to ask actually, because you mentioned that the big thing you needed to figure out to make the Airtable integration work was kind of the creation of fancy formulas to get things working across. So, I mean, I know you're not sharing anymore. You could share again if you have, like, I was interested in what you meant by that because I don't work in Airtable very much. So, like, what are we talking about? Like a short, neat and tidy sum, or like something intimidating?
No, so like most of it's just concatenating things. Actually, I can pull up, give me a second and I'll pull up the other site that I'm working on, because it is a very good explanation of the kind of things that I needed to do in order to do it. If it's,
I feel like it would really bug me when I started going into Airtable and adding a column that said works with, and then I filled out the whole column and I said works with in every cell, and then I concatenated the two together. So, you know, or I had here's who they've worked with, and then I've got another column right next to it that is the concatenation of what I need to do. Like, it would bother me that I have these like superfluous columns in Airtable that are there just so that I can present my data the correct way or how I want in Softr.
But you can hide those columns once you've got them into your formula. Then you can hide those so you don't see them all the time.
Oh, but I know that.
I know, because I was doing that today. Actually, I was doing exactly that today.
Yeah, well, that I think that's been my biggest headache with using it for sure, is been that. Here's
I think, you know, and I mean, Jeremy's probably doing a much more complex layout than most people do with Softr.
Okay.
You know, just
I don't, yeah, well,
yeah.
I don't know if I guess my layouts, I think the amount of data maybe is that. So let me see here.
How did you get you said everything's a block, but then you had buttons all lined up side by side?
So I had to use the button. So they have the drop down for different types of fields, so text and H1s and all the rest of it. And they have a button block that you can basically add. You know, I have URLs and it goes to that button, and that button is just a label. And that was a happy accident. I didn't realize that if I put buttons, if I made everything buttons, they would just line up together. But that's the only thing that does.
Oh, because you had some social icons too. But was that
so? The social icons are set.
That's a block.
Yeah. So the, like in the footer, the social icons are there, or wherever they're at in their particular blocks. I'm not sure my computer is. Things are things. Okay, this is
Eli's on the bond me. That's a good call.
Yeah, I googled that and second the motion. It's amazing.
Okay, so here's a bunch of, so this is like the test bars. So very kind of similar thing, but so see how many times I had to put trying different things, like as far as the name of the place for the state or the city, and then in order to get this on, you know, the country and zip code on one line, I had to concatenate it so that it would be that way. The hours were probably there's a whole formula just for making the hours one line. So it would go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So the end result, oh, why don't I publish this? This is all test data anyway, so I'm not,
you have
I'm
bands
safe.
and bars. That's kind of cool.
I'm safe here. this is for venues. Publish. Where's the app? There we go. And so this took a while. So even just to get like this block of address all in one is actually a formula, because you can only put, it would basically have a label and then the value, the label and the value. So you couldn't get them even that close together if you wanted to like stack them on top of each other without the label, like the 455 North and the Tennessee. And the same thing with this hours. The hours was a pain. Like you just want to be able to write Monday this time, Tuesday this time. But no, to create this block was to create a whole, so much to your your idea there, that is a complicated part of it. Sign in full user. And then this is what I was showing about the specific data. So this is artists only information that only approved users can actually end up seeing. So that's how you would like hide an entire block. You can change that with just the user permissions. So in this case, everybody can see this stuff that's up top, but then only the artist information can see the booking details and whatnot, other specific details. But all of these kind of things is concatenating a whole bunch of stuff together. And so there was a lot of that. I mean, I don't think they're super complicated. It's just time consuming.
Yeah.
So that's all.
So
How do I stop?
Go ahead, Penny.
I was just going to say, I've only built one site with it, but it took me about a half an hour to build the whole site. It took me longer to figure out web scraping to get the information that I wanted to show than it did to actually build the site itself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a very simple site, and I just used one of their templates, but, changing colors and images and, setting it all up, making the connections to Airtable took very, very little time.
I've always wanted to scrape the web. And I've never had a good use case, so I've never done it. But does it make you feel like you've got superpowers when you're out there, like, oh, I'm just gathering all this data, putting it into here, and look at, I didn't have to do anything, and it's just great? Or is it?
Well, I did it once, and it was ugly and difficult, and I'm sure scrapers are better than I thought I was using a decent one, but I guess not. Or I was just still trying to figure out how it worked, right, and how to get the information out of the site that I was trying to scrape from. So, but yeah, I mean, I've seen people build amazing things with, by scraping other sites.
Yeah.
E-commerce stores and all sorts of things.
So Rachel said something earlier that I think, to kind of bring this back full circle here to, like, this is a Webflow meetup. Could you, I think the answer to her question, I think, is yes, but she said, could you do a Webflow front end, like marketing site, and then once you log in, could that take you to Softr, and then you're on the Softr login pages and all that? And I think the answer is yes. Like, there's no reason that you could build your login button just leads to the Softr login page, right? And then you're in the app.website.com, right?
Yeah.
I can tell from Justin's posture that he's got thoughts on this.
The question, though, in my mind is that the only delineation that's possible, or are there other variations on that where it's like, oh, well, you could actually use Softr for the login mechanism, because that's really easy to use. And then some of it could be Softr, but then you could also embed or iframe or bring other pieces into the Softr backend. And I know that's getting more complex, but is the only delineation like, no, you can do front end Webflow, back end Softr, app Softr, or are there other things other ways that you can break it up?
I would also add to that, because I'm framing this question around like a side project that I'm currently working on, where I'm thinking, well, maybe that would be a good solution for this. But ultimately, I think even if you did have a login that was tied to these, like tied to Airtable, tied really neatly, so you have all these beautiful, records that are being updated and vice versa in real time, could you then use the data in Airtable to then feed in certain information back to the Webflow side of things? Or at that point, are you like too many fingers and too many pies?
There are just enough fingers and just enough pies there, I think.
To conclude.
Well, you could just use make or Zapier. It'd just be from Airtable. Then you wouldn't like Softr just instantly hooks up one way or two ways to Airtable, so you just use something else to take the information from Airtable
to Webflow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dustin, do you actually have a big fat opinion about this, or am I extrapolating because you're in the dark?
No, no strong opinions on this. It seems like it is there's definitely like a limited, not necessarily limited, but a very specific use case, for where it's useful. And tying it in, like you said, with the login, kind of going from a normal page to a more featured one like that is certainly doable. You just have to take into consideration the presentation to the user base. Like if they're on a phone using it, is it going to look all jacked up because you can't control it? So keeping that sort of thing in mind. But if it's something that's very specifically like everyone who uses this is definitely on a workstation kind of a thing, there's certainly ways that I could see that being useful.
Yeah, the responsiveness did seem a bit concerning.
Okay, so maybe I made that more alarming than it is. It actually, as far as the responsiveness, is actually pretty good. It's just in that particular use case where I used an image, and then I found out that when it did something strange to that particular image. But as far as their own blocks and the data that goes in it, it actually is very seamless. Again, it doesn't give you a ton of control. Like when the filters go, they stack on top of each other in kind of a very, I don't know, not my particular favorite way of having, because you can't make a filter go side by side or change the thing. It just stacks on top of each other in mobiles. So that's where I would say that there's limitations. But it actually, I don't know, Penny, what do you find when you used it? Like it's mobile responsive just by default because of the way the blocks are built.
Yeah, well, what I built was really, really simple. I'm looking at it right now, and it works fine on a mobile device, but it has no, sort of unusual bells and whistles. It was purely just the blocks that it came with. So
it feels like what you do is you go, hey, I've got this idea for this grilled cheese site. You say, I'm going to build my Airtable out, and I'm going to start putting in great grilled cheese places. I'm going to quickly set that up in Softr, and I'm going to try to get subscribers somehow. Once I hit a certain number of subscribers, and so I figure out that this thing is actually real, then I keep then what I do is I start building my new site in Webflow that's got all my whiz-bang stuff, and I hook up my Airtable I hook up my Webflow site to my Airtable site using Wizzed. And then I can build it however I want. And I can display the information however I want using Wizzed connecting to Airtable. And that seems like the evolution that then allows me to go from my minimum viable product to then my version 1. And then eventually, once I've eaten so many grilled cheeses and I have so many people that I've got thousands of entries, then is it Xano is the one that Wiz talks about, move from Airtable to Xano because it's that much faster.
If only Spencer was still here, because he's got big fat opinions about Airtable and Xano and databases in general. He dropped something in the chat earlier about it too. Actually, he dropped
Another one that I hadn't heard of.
Kintone with a K, which I hadn't heard of before. I don't know if anybody else has here. But he threw it out as a contender with Xano as like a database or data.
I hadn't heard of that one.
I've only seen Kinto in advertisements that are like, we're better, use us instead of Airtable. So that's the deal. I haven't actually looked at it. But it's exactly that, Kyle, because even for the one that I'm building now, it was just kind of like, well, here's the option. Although I didn't even know Wiz exists, I gave an option for like a development. I'll figure out how to make this login thing happen, development version. And then that was going to be Webflow based for the front end. But I would see, if they do well with this, I would see them running into limitations, and they need to, it would be the Wiz would be the next step.
Yep.
Yeah, unless I guess Webflow brings in their memberships and they work wonderful and all the rest of it.
Yeah. Alternatively, what you do is you build this in Webflow, and you start out, your MVP is a free version. Maybe you can collect email addresses so that you're updating people, but it's like you're collecting email addresses, but it's just a Webflow site with a CMS. And then once you're like, oh, this is great, I want to do paid content or something, then you throw on MemberStack on top of that, knowing that you might end up not having like a secure grilled cheese website. But so you could go, and then that feels like it's more of the pure Webflow route is going Webflow with MemberStack.
But MemberStack wouldn't necessarily, like, the nice thing about starting with Airtable is you'd have that base setup that could then expand very naturally. Whereas if you go Webflow plus MemberStack, you would then need to create a base at some point, right? You'd need to export it.
If you ever switch.
Okay.
Then you're like, then you're going from the CMS, and you're basically saying, I need to create my CMS in Airtable. And now there's a little pain. So,
someone told me 5 years ago that I'd be hosting this little Webflow meetup talking about like databases and MVPs. I'd be like, you're crazy, but I'm having such a good time and I love everybody.
It's Jeremy, thank you for doing this. I think it's been
Absolutely
helpful to just see what it's like. You've definitely, I think, inspired me to really give my grilled cheese website a go. I
feel like no one's really said that. You've just really pumped it up on your one there.
He's talked himself into it.
I'm talking to my wife about this. I was like, I should do grilled cheese. Well, it started out as this. She's vegan. And so I was like, you do all this research on these vegan restaurants and you know all of the vegan places around town. And like, why don't we have a website where you just even for your sake, just let's start keeping track of all the vegan places. And then whenever we're like, where should we go for dinner tonight? Well, now we can just go and look and see where all the vegan places are. And so that was what it spawned. And then I was like, but wait, hold on. I really want grilled cheese sandwiches.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can kind of do that with, Airtable with the views and stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, because I've seen people set that up. This software is kind of the next step to actually making it look better than an Airtable view. And again, I don't know what they're doing with the interface designer, but the fact that it's locked to only people that have edit permissions is a huge, it actually doesn't make it useful.
I think you can view it as someone who doesn't have edit permissions, right?
No,
it's you have to actually be able to see. You have to be on.
I thought
a user on the site.
you've got executives who aren't going to dig into your Airtable, but they still need to see information. And
Oh,
so,
maybe they can see it, but they can't interact with it or something like that. Is
yeah,
it-
they can like view, they can just like see what's going on. They're not
No,
going to like
'cause-
update a record.
I don't think they can, because the thought was to do something like very simple for other directories, but make it look nicer. And because that would be nice to do, right? You just, here, I want to display this and share it with other people, but you can't share it. You can't share it with people that aren't in the
Let me see. I've
company
got
or whatnot. I don't think.
I've got a,
At least that was my understanding of it.
It does say it's so that collaborators only need to view the most relevant information to make decisions.
so I think
So
what they
I
have to,
think they have to be a
what they have to-
collaborator.
I think you have to name, do you have to share, like, you have to be like, I'm sharing with this email address. It can't just be like a public thing. So it's not that they have to be, it's not that they have to have edit access, but they need to be listed on the page or listed on that interface as like, you have access to this. You don't necessarily need to pay for them though.
Oh, I always thought it was, I mean, but because it's not public, that's the downside to it, because I guess you can share it to a particular person, maybe.
This is Airtable.
So check
Yeah.
it.
I actually recall getting a notification recently about how Airtable had changed their settings. So anybody who's added as a collaborator to a base is upping the costs, like you pay for them.
So I created this little interface. We had we have trainees that come in, they submit tasks and then we check them. And anyway, but this
Right.
is an interface. And if I share this interface, I can share it with, read only, and then I could share this with someone, but I don't get like a share link. And so I don't think whoever I share it with, I could like share it with myself. I could share it with myself.
Oh, they're giving them permission to read your whole base.
Both the interface and the base. Well, I think the interface needs access to the base, I would assume.
Right.
Okay, so now let's go to my other one. Okay, so you got to have an account. Do I have an account? See and download your contacts. What? Okay, so I'm not a paid person on this account, but I can see this. But I think to our point though, this doesn't work as a public website.
Yeah.
And you can't interact with that in any way.
I think I can expect, but I can't
Okay.
edit. I can't edit it.
You know,
Rachel, trim this part out of our video, because I've got like coworker information on here.
Oh no.
no problem, bud.
Oops.
If I go back to the base here, like I see who it's shared with, I don't think.
Kyle, stop.
No, I don't think I'm. Oh, I
Just
am.
blur the
I'm
screen here.
Yeah, right. Just screen share. It's just emails that are public on our website. So, but it's not. I'm. So you can see here as someone on the base, who the base was shared with. You can see this is my personal email that is read only.
Right.
So I will remove that one collaborator. So anyway, that is that's what I got.
To your point, Rachel, though, yes, I've done the Airtable thing where I thought I was like showing something to someone, and didn't realize I was adding them as a collaborator. Next, I've got a bill.
Right? You're
And
like,
it's,
I just
and
paid
it's a
$240.
year, and it's
Yeah.
a year for that person, right?
Oh,
Because
no.
they're on a
Yeah.
yearly membership, so they
Well,
like
yeah, 'cause
automatically
we got-
tag another.
We
Very
got
quickly
pinged
write
by-
an email and say, oops.
we got like a company ping from John Lenker himself saying, hello, everyone who's a collaborator on every company base we have is now being paid for. Remove yourselves if you are not using these. Like, it was one of those situations. You know, we're coming up on time, but I have a question here that I've been sitting on for Jeremy that's completely unrelated, but I really, really want to ask it. So can I steal you for a tiny bit longer?
Yeah.
Just a minute, because basically at one point you said that a big concern of yours with Softr is that Airtable considers it a small fish that it's not really bothering to consider as it relates to updates, upgrades, new features, that type of a thing. And you said that in a way that implied that maybe it is taking Webflow into consideration. Do they have that kind of a relationship? Are they bothering to accommodate for Webflow, or were you maybe referring to other bigger companies than Webflow?
No, well, no, I don't think Airtable considers Webflow. It doesn't connect directly to Webflow anyway. But Softr itself is geared for Airtable, but I don't think that's it doesn't appear to be. I mean, I don't know from personal experience or anything. It just doesn't appear to be a two-way thing. So.
Okay.
Maybe
I
they
wouldn't-
had some
yeah.
talks in. I don't know. Or maybe
Yeah.
they'll buy them out. I don't know. They'll
Yeah,
decide that they
maybe.
want that instead of the interface designer, because you can see Airtable going into that space.
Well, if
with
they
their-
got someone that's ready
Yeah.
for them, yeah. Yeah. It
Yeah,
just
but
made me
I mean,
wonder if there were specific companies that you that we know that Airtable is thinking about when they make their upgrades. Are there any like, I don't know.
I think they worry about themselves, right? Like all of them, right? It's like WordPress making updates. They don't give a hoot about the plugin developers, which is why the plugins break, right? That I'm sure with the major ones there is some collaboration, but it's like I think with most of these systems, it's like they're standalone systems with APIs, and it's up to whoever is connecting to them to make sure that they're up to date. I mean, and I'm sure there's a certain amount of develop at that developer level, or I mean at that sort of high-end level, that's at least saying, this is what we're working on, this is what we're doing, make sure that your systems will do this, but
So there's two reasons it feels like we're even having this conversation about Softr at all. One is because Webflow doesn't have a robust solution for login.
any solution.
Yeah, or I suppose any
login.
solution for login.
Yes. Yes.
It sounds like they're working on something, but it's kind of far off, or I don't know. So
I'm hearing September maybe was the last thing I heard from somebody who knows somebody who's in the beta.
yeah.
That may be what they're looking at.
Now, I will say, when it comes to Webflow, I feel like if they're going to roll out a big feature like that, feel like sometimes they might like scale down the features and like it's not perfect, but I feel like I trust the direction that they go. And so when it comes out and they're like, we're really excited about this, I feel like, okay, this has got to be good. I don't feel like they just throw out junk. So
No.
First reason, login. Second reason is that there's no way to connect to an external data source. Easily. If they were to solve those two problems, I feel like Softr's out of the picture, Wiz is out of the picture, MemberStack's out of the picture. Now maybe not out of the picture, but like you can see how, you add login. Well, then clearly you should be able to like have different tiers of users and different conditional. And now, and so it feels like those are, and I'm going to paint with a broad brush here, but it feels like those are the two big buckets that are allowing these other tools to be opportunistic and gain market share. And at least from a Webflow standpoint, for us
Yeah.
Webflow people, the only reason Jeremy and Penny that you've even looked at something else is because you're like, hey, God, I want to put everything in Airtable and I need login and it's got to be secure and
Yep.
you know.
I looked at it as an inexpensive way to quickly set something up. It's like, if you don't know how to build a website, but you can, if you don't know Webflow and you're not about to learn Webflow, you're a person who has some information that you want to get out there to the world, you can do it very easily with Softr.
That's a good
As
point.
long as you know how to run Airtable, you don't need Webflow, right? Unless you're trying to make it pretty, right? And you know, the number of people that use Webflow and know how to use it, right? Like, I would never tell somebody who's never built a website to use Webflow.
Yeah.
I don't tell people who only know like how to build in Oxygen Builder or Divi or something to use Webflow, because if they don't know anything about CSS and HTML, then they're still not going to know how to build in Webflow.
Yeah, you've got to,
You know?
it's got to be a person who's willing to put in time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if somebody just wants to get information out onto the web,
Yeah.
Softr is a great way to do it.
That's a good point.
Yeah, the big part about the thing that I'm doing right now is that you know, most of the work's been in Airtable, and it's been setting up automations for their emails and the whole kind of like, that's where all the time's been. The time has not been in Softr.
Mm-hmm.
I've spent very little time in Softr of the couple months that I've been working on this project. So that's, yeah, it's fast. I would definitely say that. And I would say that Softr is improving all the time. Like, even from where they started, they're constantly putting out new features, and they're, I think, taking things into consideration. But I also don't think I'm necessarily the market for it, because coming from Webflow, it's a different perspective.
Yeah.
It just is.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, it's if you take a look at the site, you know, they're sort of talking about resource directories, and you know, it's like it's information, it's lists of information that can be filtered, and that's the main draw for it.
Well, this has been great. I am going to officially call it because I'm tired.
And you want grilled cheese.
And I want to go eat a grilled
Go make
cheese.
one.
No, I want a grilled cheese, thanks.
Okay, well, I don't. I'm going to have a cup of tea because it's 9:30, and it's 10:30 for you, Jeremy, isn't it? No, it's not. I always think you're in Canada. And you're not.
No, it's 10:30 for me.
10:30 for you. So enjoy your midnight grilled cheese. You know,
Yeah, it's only
as
half 8.
you get your pajamas on.
Yeah, Jeremy's. It's early out there yet.
It's early, yeah.
Not as early as in Pakistan. What is it, like 7:30 in the morning over there or something? Enjoy your breakfast, Mohammed. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, really.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for coming. Good,
All right.
good seeing you. We'll be sending out updates on our next chat, but until then, stay safe.
I put a couple of links in the chat just in case. Eli, I can see that you found us through the Bevy event portal, but we don't do a lot of updates there. So if you wanted to connect with me on LinkedIn, or if you wanted to join the Discord channel, that might be a better way to get kind of notifications about the events and any videos that get uploaded and things like that. But it's up to you. We check in from time to time to give updates on what's coming next and so on and so forth. So that's where I do my communicating.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks
Great.
everyone.
Thanks
Okay.
a lot.
See you all.
Yeah.
All right.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Take it easy.
Thank you.